Hello, friend. Tonight we're taking a journey. Slow, immersive, and very sandy. You're going back, way back, to a continent of ancient mystery, blistering landscapes, and incredible civilizations. But here's the catch. You're not going as a king or a queen, not even a respected merchant. You're going as you, just you, in ancient Africa. And spoiler, you're probably not going to make it. Now get cozy, lay your head down, and let's see what one day in ancient Africa does to someone who forgot to bring sunscreen, bug repellent, or a working understanding of how to barter. Chapter 1. You wake up somewhere in Africa. 900 AD. You awaken beneath a thatched roof, the kind woven tightly from elephant grass and suspended on poles. The roof is low, lower than you're used to, and there's no door, just a swath of cloth fluttering in the dusty morning air. You blink, trying to understand where you are. Outside, chickens strut between huts. A woman wearing a wrap of indigo-dyed cotton walks by, balancing a clay pot on her head. Two barefoot children chase a goat that's very clearly not in the mood. You sit up and realize something deeply troubling. You're not wearing what you went to sleep in. Your clothes are gone, replaced with something made of plant fiber. It itches, terribly. The air smells of charcoal, warm earth, and a faint tang of fermented millet. You're not sure if you're hungry or nauseous. A stranger peers in through the flap, an older man with skin dark and weathered like tree bark. He says something to you in a language you don't recognize. You're still trying to comprehend what he said when he tosses you a gourd full of water. You miss. It hits your chest and splashes down your itchy shirt. Congratulations. It's early morning in the Sahel. You're in the middle of ancient West Africa, in the heartland of what will someday become Mali. You're not ready. Someone hands you a wooden bowl of grain porridge. It's warm, salty, and suspiciously crunchy. You chew slowly. There's sand in it. Of course there is. You're motioned to stand. There's work to be done, and you're told to follow the group heading toward the well. You haven't walked 5 steps before the sun hits you like a frying pan. Welcome to your first hour. Chapter 2. Welcome to the Sahel. The dust, the heat, the goats. If you thought your early morning was tough, wait until you meet mid-morning in the Sahel. The sun climbs the sky with an alarming lack of restraint, baking the ground beneath your bare, very confused feet. You walk behind a group of locals, young and old, carrying empty containers, woven baskets, and ceramic jugs. They walk like they've done this since birth. You walk like someone trying to ice skate on gravel. The path to the well is not paved. It is a meandering, sand-choked trail scattered with thorny plants, goat droppings, and the occasional staring donkey. The wind picks up and sends a fine, powdery dust into your eyes, ears, and lungs. You cough. No one else does. As you trudge forward, your brain begins to protest. Why is your skin tingling? That, friend, is your body realizing it's under attack. The sun's rays here don't just tan, they scorch. And you, unmoisturized, unacclimated, and already dehydrated, are beginning to resemble a lizard. By the time you reach the well, you're dizzy. You try to help draw water, but the rope and bucket mechanism is foreign to you. You turn it the wrong way. The bucket drops, splash. Everyone watches. You have now wasted half an hour's worth of effort. The locals are patient, kind even. A teenage girl with a jawline sharper than your life decisions hoists your empty jug onto her own head. She says something soft in her language. You imagine she's saying, "Bless your clueless heart." The walk back is worse. Your jug is now full, heavier, and balanced badly in your hands, sloshing water down your legs. The sand has turned into soft ash under the midday sun, and your feet feel like they're being broiled. A goat nudges you in passing. You nearly fall. The goat does not apologize. When you return to the village, you try to rest in the shade. But the air doesn't move. It just sits on your chest like a sleepy hippo. The only relief comes from a tiny breeze that lasts 3 seconds and brings with it the smell of goat urine and roasted yam. You wonder if you've made it to lunchtime. You haven't. It's 10:12 a.m. Chapter 3, Mali Empire Morning Commute. You're told, through an elaborate series of hand gestures and sympathetic looks, that you're expected to accompany a trade caravan. It's going to a nearby market town, or maybe not nearby. The translator didn't quite specify. You've just agreed to walk across part of the ancient Mali Empire. One of the men hands you a piece of dried meat wrapped in a leaf. It's pungent. You eat it anyway. Your stomach begins negotiating with your dignity. The caravan isn't camels and drums, not yet. It's goats, donkeys, baskets of salt, sheaves of millet, calabashes of shea butter, and people with backs far stronger than yours. You are given a bundle to carry. It weighs approximately 1 adult dog. You are assured this is the light one. Your feet are blistered within half an hour. You trip on an anthill. You step in something warm and unsettling. The sun seems angrier now, personal. The others walk at a pace that seems leisurely, but you are slowly dying. You ask if there's a break. They laugh. One man points to a baobab tree on the horizon. "Rest there," someone says. It looks close. It is not. Baobabs are deceptively huge, and you're pretty sure it's a mirage. By the time you reach the tree, your legs are jelly. You collapse in its shade, gasping. The little girl hands you some tamarind pulp mixed with water and honey. It's the best thing you've ever tasted. Just as you start to believe you'll survive, someone claps twice. Time to move again. Chapter 4, Gold, Salt, and a lot of walking. Inside the ancient market. At long last, you arrive. The market town isn't what you expected. No cobbled streets or tidy booths. It's sprawling, dusty, and vibrant. More like an explosion of color, sound, and smell. Everywhere you look, someone is bartering, shouting, grinding, pounding, selling. It's beautiful chaos. Stalls, or rather, mats spread on the ground, are overflowing with wares. Bright textiles, carved gourds, smelted tools, spices, cola nuts, and strange-smelling medicinal roots. You stare too long at something, and suddenly a merchant is in your face, waving it and offering you 5 in exchange for something. That's when it hits you. You don't have money. You don't even have cowries. Ancient African economies didn't run on coins alone. They traded salt for gold, cloth for camels, promises for power. You, meanwhile, have one sweaty tunic and a half-empty gourd of tamarind water. The merchant is still talking. You nod. You have accidentally agreed to buy an entire basket of fermented locust beans. You are now a locust bean entrepreneur. Someone drags you to the gold section. Yes, there's a section, because Mali is rich, filthy rich. Gold dust flows through this land like glitter at a children's party. Except you're not invited. Men in fine robes speak in low tones. Deals are made in Arabic, Mande, Fulani, and languages your brain has never heard. A scribe with a board of wax records a transaction by drawing letters with a stick. You are deeply, profoundly out of your element. You try to blend in. A man hands you a pinch of salt. It's currency, he says. You nod solemnly, as if you knew that already. You eat it. Everyone stares. You try to leave the market. A child tugs your sleeve. She points to your feet. You look down. Your left sandal is gone. You are now 1/3 barefoot. The sun is dropping now, but your journey is far from over. The caravan prepares to move on, and you're told there's another stop. You don't know where. You don't know why, but you follow. Chapter 5. The night is not for sleeping. Rituals, spirits, and midnight drumming. You arrive back at a smaller village just as the sky turns ember orange. You think you've finally made it to rest, but no. Tonight is special. There's a ritual. Maybe for the harvest, maybe for the moon, maybe for fun. No one tells you. A fire is lit, then another. Soon the village is surrounded by flickering light and strange smoke. The people begin to gather, dressed in bright garments, faces painted with ochre, indigo, and ash. A drum beat begins, slow and pulsing. You're handed a carved mask. You're not sure if it's sacred or a costume. You put it on backward. The drumming intensifies. Bodies begin to move. Some dance, some convulse. Some enter trances so deep you worry they've left their souls somewhere in the stars. Someone throws powder into the fire. It flares blue. Children cheer. A man with bones in his beard starts a chant. Others join. You try to hum along but end up sneezing. Someone offers you a drink from a clay cup. You sip. It's fermented and spiced, and your mouth immediately regrets it. You hand it back with a smile that says, "Thank you," and eyes that scream, "What did I just drink?" The drumming doesn't stop. Not at midnight, not at 1. You try to sleep. You fail. Your mat is itchy. Your stomach is uncertain. And the sounds of celebration throb through the walls. Eventually, you pass out. Whether from exhaustion, mild food poisoning, or spiritual overwhelm, no one knows. You survive the night. Barely. Chapter 9. The Edge of the Map. What lies beyond the desert? You expected a city, maybe stone walls, market squares, and a proper place to collapse. But no. What greets you is the endless ripple of sand dunes under a sky that looks stretched too tightly. The desert. No map you've ever seen can explain what's beyond this point. To you, it's a vast blank. To your companions, it's the gateway to possibility. Salt mines, oases, distant kingdoms. Timbuktu is whispered like a prayer, but also like a warning. Before leaving, your guides tie a cloth around your face. Not for fashion, for survival. The desert wind isn't just wind, it's a living force. A cruel, sandblasting, skin-peeling whisper from the Sahara herself. The camels are ready. Yes, there are camels now. Towering, unamused, and smelling like damp wool and dried apricots. You are handed the reins of one. You're not told how to ride it. You attempt to mount. You fail. Twice. On your third try, the camel stands up while you are halfway on. You scream. The camel does not care. By the time the caravan departs, your thighs are burning, your nose is full of sand, and your tongue is dry as papyrus. You haven't even left yet. As you ride into the desert, everything changes. The silence is thick, not empty, just vast. Like a cathedral without walls. The only sound is the shuffle of feet and the occasional squawk from a bird you can't see. Every now and then, a mirage tricks your eyes. You see water where there is none. You see trees that melt into heat haze. You wonder if this is what slowly going mad feels like. The others don't speak. They just march forward. Quiet, steady. At night, you stop at an oasis, a real one. Palms, water, frogs chirping. A fire is lit. Dates are passed around. A man recites a prayer under his breath. A woman sings something soft. You eat in silence, unsure if you're still dreaming. A man pulls out a scroll, unrolls it slowly. It's a map, but not like yours. It's more art than geography. Dots, trails, stars, and stories. Your finger hovers over a point labeled, the end of the road. He chuckles and shakes his head. No end, just more sand. You fall asleep that night staring at the stars. So bright, so impossibly near. The camel snorts nearby. The wind hisses quietly. Somewhere out there, far beyond the next dune, lies gold, salt, wisdom, and ruin. Chapter 12. Timbuktu, the Library of the Sahara. Books, sorcery, and sandstorms. You arrive in Timbuktu at dusk. Not the fabled metropolis of towering golden domes you imagined, but a city made of earth. Literally. The buildings rise from the sand in shades of sun-baked ochre and soft clay, blending almost imperceptibly into the dunes. Mud brick mosques with jagged wooden supports stick out like porcupine spines, as if trying to comb the sky. Yet there's something magical here. Not loud, but humming beneath the dust. A presence. Timbuktu is not a place of gold and noise. It's a place of knowledge. A quiet, dangerous kind of knowledge. You're taken to a scholar's home, a tall, robed man with kind eyes and suspiciously ink-stained fingers. He welcomes you in Arabic, then switches to Songhai, then Fulani, then something else entirely. You just nod. He offers you tea. It is green. It is aggressively minty. It is also hotter than lava. You sit on cushions surrounded by stacks of manuscripts. Pages upon pages, bound in leather, crumbling at the edges, written in elegant scripts that dance like flames. Astronomy, law, poetry, medicine, sorcery, trade, histories of kingdoms long lost to sand. He hands you one scroll, unusually small. You squint. It's a guide to surviving sandstorms by listening to the direction camels tilt their heads. Another contains a spell to protect your house from spirits who hate unclean kitchens. A third, a treatise on lunar eclipses and how they may or may not be the fault of your neighbor's goat. This is not just a city of books. It's a city of ideas. Some breathtakingly rational, some absolutely unhinged, all treasured. And then, whoosh, the wind shifts. People scramble outside. You're hurried onto the roof, where you see it, a sandstorm miles wide, rolling like a living wall across the horizon. It's not approaching, it's devouring. Before you can react, someone yanks a scarf over your head and pulls you back down. Doors slam, windows are covered. Inside, it goes dark. You hear the storm hit. It sounds like the sky is grinding its teeth. For hours, the house moans under pressure. Sand forces its way through every crevice, filling your nose, ears, shoes, soul. And then, silence. You emerge to find the city buried. Streets gone, doorways gone. Only domes and minarets poke above the dunes like the backs of sleeping giants. The scholar laughs. He says, "This is why we write things down." You nod, slowly. You finally understand. This isn't just history, it's survival, scratched into parchment. Chapter 13. Sorcerers, Snakes, and the Night Markets of the Niger Delta. You leave the dry embrace of Timbuktu and head south, toward where the land breathes again, where the rivers twist like mythological serpents and the air is thick enough to chew. Welcome to the Niger Delta, a labyrinth of wetlands, dense forests, and humid fog. It is a place as alive as it is weird. Imagine Venice, but stickier, greener, and with a slightly higher chance of being hexed by someone selling yams. You're ferried in a carved wooden canoe. paddled by a boy no older than 12, who whistles a haunting tune as he guides the boat through twisting channels lined with mangroves. You try to help. You drop the paddle. You are kindly told to just sit still and not summon any river spirits. As the sun sets, the river begins to glow. Fireflies hover like blinking stars. Frogs chirp like malfunctioning clocks. Somewhere distant, drums begin to beat. Not threatening, just persistent. Like the heartbeat of the swamp. You arrive at a village raised on stilts, lit by oil lamps, echoing with laughter. But this is no ordinary settlement. This, you're told, is the location of the night market. A place where trade, gossip, and other worldly dealings blur into one sticky, magical mess. You walk between stalls selling dried crocodile heads, bottles labeled simply wind, amulets made from snake bones, a carved idol that seems to be breathing, and a bowl of what you're told is truth-telling soup, but smells suspiciously like overcooked catfish and anxiety. You are invited to consult a diviner. He lives in a hut made of old fishing nets and feathers, and his eyes are milk white. He shakes a bag of bones, spills them, and frowns. I see confusion, sand, stars. You are lost. Well, yes. He picks up a tiny snake from his lap. Why did no one mention the snake before? And sets it on a map painted in charcoal on the floor. The snake slithers straight to a symbol that looks like a chicken. Ah, he says, as if that explains everything. You're asked to offer something in exchange for clarity. You have nothing except a plastic water bottle. You offer it. He takes it, reverently, as if it were a sacred relic. Maybe it is. Suddenly, a loud hiss fills the air. Everyone freezes. The diviner waves a feathered charm, and the noise fades. Python god, he whispers. He disapproves of your socks. You take them off immediately. As the night deepens, you share grilled plantains, dance with strangers to a rhythm that doesn't follow Western time signatures, and watch someone sell an entire canoe for a single carved comb that used to belong to a river princess. You fall asleep in a hammock, lulled by water sloshing beneath you, surrounded by spirits, storytellers, and more kinds of bugs than you knew existed. Chapter 14. Jungle Law, Poisoned Arrows, Talking Drums, and the Empire That Vanished. Morning breaks like an egg onto a skillet. The jungle greets you with steam, not mist, steam. The trees drip. The air tastes like damp moss and mosquito breath. Every surface squelches. You are now in Central Africa, deep in a rainforest that feels more like a living organism than a place. Welcome to the kingdom of silence and sound, the dense heart of what once was the kingdom of Congo. There are no paved roads here, no open skies, just twisting routeways, flickering sunlight, and the sensation that you are always being watched. You probably are. You're traveling with a local hunting party, 3 men, 2 women, and 1 teenager who makes a clicking sound every few seconds to warn the forest spirits that you're just passing through. You try to imitate it. He says, "No, stop, you're insulting the monkeys." They are armed with poison-tipped arrows, not dipped, soaked. The poison comes from a plant that, if you touch it, will make your fingers forget how to move. It is explained to you casually, right after you almost lean against it. Their quarry today is small game. Birds, monkeys, maybe an antelope if the forest is generous. You are given the job of carrying the lunch basket. You're doing okay until you hear the drums. At first, you think it's thunder, but it's too patterned, too smart. The hunter beside you smiles. "Message drum," he says. "News is coming." He's right. These are talking drums, a full-blown forest internet, passing information across the canopy from village to village. Someone has given birth. Someone else saw a leopard. Someone traded fish for salt and wants everyone to know about it. The jungle is alive with messages, and you can't read a single one. You ask about the vanished empire, a story whispered in your dreams now, mentioned once by the diviner in the delta. They nod solemnly. There was once a king who spoke to the trees. He built a city of wooden towers. Then one day, the forest swallowed it. All of it. He's still in there. Listening, you laugh nervously. They do not. The day stretches. You are bitten by something large. You step into something soft and questionable. You lose a sandal to a carnivorous plant. It may have just been a mud hole. You'll never know. By late afternoon, you stumble into a clearing, an ancient site. Overgrown, half-sunken stones mark where a royal compound once stood. Vines now rule here. But you can feel it. Power, ceremony, echoes. A broken ceremonial drum lies nearby, its skin torn. The jungle has erased the names, but not the mood. You sit on one of the stones. It's warm. You close your eyes, and for a second, just a second, you hear the jungle sigh. Not wind, not animals. Memory. Chapter 15. Gold, blood, and glory. The rise of the Ashanti. You're back on firmer ground now, Waseti, literally and metaphorically. The vines have loosened, the trees have given way, and in their place stands a world shaped by wealth, war, and deeply complex royal bureaucracy. You are now in the Ashanti Empire, around the 1700s, in what is modern-day Ghana. You know this because the gold dust in the air is practically visible. Everything gleams here. From the ornaments braided into people's hair to the ceremonial swords carried by teenage guards wearing leopard skins. The Ashanti did not build their empire with luck. They built it with gold, iron, and an absolutely stunning level of administrative efficiency. Think of them as the ancient IRS, but with better drumming and a higher chance of being haunted. Your arrival coincides with a festival. You don't know what kind. No one tells you. But there's dancing, feasting, and the unmistakable sound of someone chanting in honor of the golden stool. Ah, yes. The golden stool. Not a metaphor. A literal stool made of gold, which holds the soul of the Ashanti people. No one sits on it, not even the king. It is sacred, eternal, and protected by enough warriors to fill a modern stadium. When they parade it through the streets, people bow. Even birds stop chirping. You try to take a closer look and are politely moved several feet back by a guard with a very shiny spear. The king arrives shortly after. He's carried in on a palanquin draped with gold-threaded cloth, surrounded by a retinue of linguists, musicians, executioners, yes, that's plural, and praise singers who shout poetry so enthusiastically you're worried they might pass out. He does not speak directly. He speaks through a linguist who repeats his words with flair, volume, and dramatic pauses. You realize quickly, in the Ashanti court, words are weapons, and everyone is armed to the teeth. Later, you are invited to the palace. It is massive, walled, and painted in earthy reds. Intricate carvings line the doorways. Inside, a scribe records every visitor, every gift, every overheard conversation. You introduce yourself. He writes down, "Tall stranger. Smells faintly of cassava." That night, you witness a trial by oath. A man accused of theft swears his innocence while holding a sacred object. If he's lying, it's believed the gods will strike him. He looks nervous. You're nervous. Even the fire seems to flicker judgmentally. He is acquitted. You breathe out. Someone hands you a cup of palm wine. You drink. It is intense, like fermented bananas soaked in nostalgia and hot pepper. As the drumming begins again, you realize this empire isn't just rich in gold, it's rich in order. And you, a chaotic traveler who once tripped over a goat in Chapter 2, are vastly out of your league. Chapter 16, the Slave Coast. Shadows, shackles, and ships that sailed west. It begins with a whisper, a name. Ouida. You hear it on the wind, on the lips of traders, in the frightened hush of children listening to adult conversations they're not supposed to understand. You've now entered the coast of Benin, once known as the Slave Coast, an unforgiving edge of the continent where the tides brought ships and the ships brought chains. It's the 1700s, and the transatlantic slave trade is in full, horrifying bloom. You walk through a marketplace that should feel ordinary. Women selling dried fish, spices, cowries, and cloth. But something feels off. In the far corner, a group of men sit under a cloth awning, speaking in Portuguese and fanning themselves with broad palm leaves. Their faces are pale, their clothes damp from humidity, and their pockets lined with silver. They are slave traders, and their business is booming. Behind them, a narrow path leads to the shore. You follow it, tentatively, and come upon a fort, stark, stone, foreign. It stares out at the ocean like it regrets nothing. This is Fort San Juan Baptista de Ajuda, one of many outposts used to ship thousands upon thousands of enslaved Africans to the Americas. The smell of salt and fear lingers. You don't want to go inside. But history insists. Inside, you find cramped cells, shackles, a dark, damp tunnel known as the Door of No Return. Here people, some taken in war, others betrayed by rival tribes or sold for profit, were led onto ships bound for places they would never understand and never escape. A local man speaks to you in you. His tone is steady, bitter, proud. They took people, he says, but they couldn't take our spirits. You walk out into the harsh daylight, shaken. A funeral drum sounds in the distance, not for person, for memory. Chapter 17, Swahili shores. Coral cities, sailors, and spices. The wind changes. It smells sweet, like cardamom, cinnamon, and cloves. You're now on the eastern coast of Africa, in the 11th century, staring at a city that shouldn't exist by your expectations. A metropolis of stone architecture, winding alleys, and Arabic calligraphy carved into coral walls. Welcome to Kilwa Kisiwani, one of the most powerful Swahili city-states. Your jaw drops. This place looks more like something out of the Arabian Nights than any African village you were ever shown in school. That's because the Swahili coast was never isolated. It was global. These cities traded across the Indian Ocean with Persia, India, Arabia, even China. Merchants in embroidered robes stroll past you, speaking Swahili laced with Farsi and Arabic. You're brought to the great mosque of Kilwa, one of the oldest in sub-Saharan Africa. It is cool inside, silent, holy. Outside, boats called dhows bob on the tide. Their sails puff like camel humps. You join a merchant ship crew. Bad idea. The sea is not your friend. You vomit twice before the dhow even leaves port. Your crewmates laugh. Someone hands you coconut water. You recover enough to observe their method of navigation, the stars. One sailor shows you how they read constellations, not as myths, but as maps. You travel to Zanzibar, then up to Mombasa, another vibrant Swahili hub. You meet poets, sailors, and women dressed in fine silk who run entire spice businesses from shaded courtyards. At night, the sea laps softly against coral docks. The moonlight glows like silver dust over ocean waves. You sit on the roof of a merchant's home, eating honey-drenched pastries and listening to an oud player sing a love song written 800 years ago. You feel for once that maybe you found peace, until the merchant says, "Tomorrow, we sail to Sofala. The crocodiles there like new visitors." Chapter 18. Sofala and the gold beneath your feet. A river of riches you awaken to shouting. Not angry shouting, triumphant shouting. Land has been sighted. Your dhow creaks toward the mouth of the Sofala coast in what is now Mozambique. And you're about to witness something extraordinary. Africa's gold artery. Sofala isn't just a port, it's a gilded gate. Up the river lies the ancient kingdom of Great Zimbabwe, a stone citadel inland, known to outsiders only by the glimmer of what it traded. Gold. Pure, powdery gold. It arrives in Sofala in cloth bundles, carried on heads, packed in baskets, hidden under wax seals. Local rulers control the trade like surgeons with scalpels. Precise, disciplined, utterly ruthless. You've barely stepped off the boat before you hear the word Murenga. That's the spirit of kings, and also the name whispered in the wind when the ground rumbles beneath the earth. Earthquakes here are not just geology, they're politics. You travel upriver, crossing landscapes alive with baobabs and jackals, until you see it. Stone walls curving like snake coils, rising without mortar, built with mathematical precision. This is Great Zimbabwe, a kingdom of architecture, mystery, and, somehow, complete silence. Inside, the great enclosure holds secrets. No one lives in the stone buildings anymore. They were ceremonial, sacred, political. Your guide says, these walls speak when the drums stop. The rulers here aren't showy. Their power is subtle. A nod, a raised brow, a refusal to speak. That's how authorities felt. You attend a council. They let you sit, barely. An elder wears beads carved from river bone. Another chews bitter cola nut and spits onto the dirt before speaking. You do not understand the language. You understand the tone. They are discussing tribute, marriage alliances, and omens. That night, a ceremony is held near the edge of the Acropolis. Drums, smoke, incense. You see a dancer move like wind shadow, wrapped in zebra hide, face painted in lines. It is not for you. You're not supposed to be here. But you watch anyway. By the time you fall asleep, your dreams are made of gold dust and stone rings, and the sound of rain that never quite touches the ground. Chapter 19. The Horn of Africa. Empires among the clouds. You thought you had seen everything. You were wrong. Now you're climbing. Northward, the terrain sharpens. Grasslands give way to highlands. Cool mist replaces muggy jungle air. You gasp as your donkey, yes, you're riding a donkey now, climbs a cliff path to what feels like the roof of the continent. Welcome to Aksum, the ancient empire of the Ethiopian highlands, or what remains of it. This is not a place built for visitors. Stone obelisks pierce the sky like forgotten antennae. Churches are carved downward into rock instead of built upward. You find one. St. George's Church in Lalibela. It's not on a hill. It is the hill, hollowed by hand. You walk in through a carved tunnel and enter a chamber cooler than any castle you've seen. Priests stand wrapped in saffron cloth. They carry crosses of twisted silver and chant in Ge'ez, an ancient language still spoken only in scripture. You attend Mass at dawn. It lasts 3 hours. You do not understand a word. but you cry anyway. Later, you're invited to a feast. Injera, spiced lentils, a sour wine made from honey and defiance. They ask if you're fasting. You say no. They smile politely. Everyone else is. You've made a blunder. Your host, a stoic elder with one blind eye, gives you a scroll as a gift. It contains a prayer older than most countries. In Aksum, time is not linear. It loops like the curls in a king's beard. And you, an outsider who once tripped over a goat back in chapter 2, now sit among mountain saints and soldier priests, watching sunset wash the valleys in gold and ash. Chapter 20. Kingdoms of Fire, the rise and fall of Benin. You smell it before you see it. Wood smoke, spice, bronze dust, and something more mysterious, a scent that feels like memory burned into iron. You're now in the Kingdom of Benin, not modern-day Benin, but the heart of what is now southern Nigeria. This is a city of wide avenues, mud brick walls, and streets swept so clean they squeak beneath your feet. And yet, you feel watched, because here the Oba sees all. The Oba is not a king. He is a god king, a being both political and spiritual, who walks behind coral bead curtains and speaks through servants trained to echo his voice like living microphones. You do not meet him. You wouldn't survive it. Instead, you are granted access to the guilds. Bronze casters, ivory carvers, leopard hunters. You visit a foundry where metal is poured like molten sunlight into clay molds. The air is thick with history. You see plaques, being in bronzes, lined with reliefs of battles, diplomats, and rituals. Each one a historical record forged into sculpture. Each one a warning. They do not write history here, they cast it. One artisan offers to make your face into a plaque. You agree, hesitantly. The result is humbling. You did not realize your forehead looked like that. In the marketplace, you hear the chants of Edo women traders, fierce and eloquent. They negotiate like poets, sing songs about lineage, and somehow convince you to buy a yam the size of your torso. But Benin is not just ritual and craft. It's also fortress-like. The city is ringed by moats and earthworks so vast they make medieval castles look like sand castles. At night, the drums begin. Not celebratory, ceremonial. A funeral procession. The Oba has lost a cousin. The entire city mourns. The streets fill with masked dancers, spirits of ancestors walking among the living. Some masks are serene, others terrifying. A child offers you one carved of ebony. You place it on your face. For a moment, you feel someone else. Then you hear whispers of war. Not with neighboring kingdoms, no. With something bigger. Ships have been seen off the coast. Foreigners, tall, pale, armed. You don't know it yet, but the end of Benin's golden age is closer than anyone realizes. You leave the city behind, not with a sense of closure, but with a gnawing sensation that greatness never dies peacefully. Chapter 21. The rivers that swallowed empires. Congo, cannibals, and colonial shadows. You've crossed savannas, climbed mountains, eaten sand-laced porridge, and survived camel tantrums. But nothing prepares you for the Congo. The moment you enter the jungle, it feels like the air has mass. Humidity wraps around you like a jealous spirit. Every breath you take tastes of soil, decay, and blossoming life all at once. You're traveling up the Congo River, one of the mightiest arteries on earth. Beside you, trees rise like green cathedrals. Vines hang like forgotten ropes. The jungle is so loud, so full of buzzing, chirping, screaming, that it becomes strangely quiet again. Your guide, A tall man with scarification patterns etched across his torso taps his paddle to a rhythm only he seems to hear. He is from the Congo Kingdom, one of the most sophisticated yet misunderstood kingdoms of its time. You arrive at Mbanza, Congo, the capital. You expected huts. Instead, you find stone buildings, streets and grids, and nobility dressed in woven silks, speaking in Portuguese-accented Kikongo. They already know of Europe. The Portuguese came over a century ago, and they never truly left. You meet a nobleman who speaks Latin, owns several Christian relics, and quotes scripture between bites of boiled cassava. Then he tells you about his other title, Elephant Commander. Oh, okay. The next day, you witness a judgment ceremony. A man is accused of stealing fish from a neighbor's trap. The court is a half-circle of elders, each with staffs, gourds, and salt for blessings. There's no yelling, only testimony, song, and consensus. Justice here is restorative, not punitive. And yet, the shadows grow. A woman in the market warns you not to stray into the forest at night, not because of beasts, but because of the people who become beasts. You ask what she means. She whispers one word, Nganga, spiritual doctors, healers, or sorcerers, or both, depending on who you ask. Later that night, you do stray, of course you do, and you hear it. Drums in the dark, a fire flickering behind the trees, masks, feathers, blood-red pigment. Is it ritual or war dance or both? You are not welcome here. Even the mosquitoes seem to bite more aggressively. Back at the village, word spreads of a European envoy on the coast. Guns, powder, flags, treaties written in ink that will soon become chains. The elders hold council. There is talk of resistance, of negotiation, of vanishing into the jungle until no outsider can find them again. Because this place cannot be conquered. Not truly. The Congo swallows empires. It does not remember flags. It remembers blood. You sleep fitfully. The river gurgles in its sleep. Somewhere, something screams like a bird. But you know no bird makes that sound. Chapter 22. Swahili dreams, coral palaces, pirate queens, and the ghosts of Zanzibar. You arrive by dhow, a creaking triangular sailed vessel that rides the monsoon like it's dancing with fate. The crew doesn't talk much. They just gesture. To the stars, to the coast, to the gods. As you disembark, your bare feet sink into warm, white sand. The buildings ahead gleam white too. Coral stone palaces, ornately carved doors, and archways that whisper of 1,000 years of poetry and trade. The air is heavy with cloves, incense, and something else. Something ancient. This is Zanzibar, but also Kilwa, Mombasa, Lamu, for this chapter isn't just one place. It's an entire world stitched together by the Swahili language, a flowing blend of Bantu roots and Arabic flourishes, a language of sailors, poets, merchants, and mystics. You are in a city-state where African kings wear Persian perfume, Arab merchants recite verse by moonlight, and Indian spices dance in boiling pots over Swahili hearths. It is not a melting pot. It's a tapestry, rich and ragged and glittering with contradiction. A guide takes you down narrow stone streets. Every door here is a monument. Carved wood, brass studs, verses from the Quran, each one an artwork and a warning. You learn that doors here are status symbols. The more ornate, the more powerful the household. You pass women in black veils and gold jewelry, men in kanzu robes and embroidered caps. You think of pirates and sultans, and you'd be right too. There were once Swahili pirate queens who commanded fleets, defended cities, and struck terror into the hearts of invaders. You hear a story in the evening of Mwana Mikisi, a warrior queen who defied rivals with blades in both hands and a city at her back. Her tale is sung, not spoken, by an old man sitting beside a carved chest. You close your eyes and see her sailing into battle, golden bangles clashing like war drums. You visit the marketplace. There are no fixed prices, only battles of wit. You try to buy a mango. You are charged for 5. You attempt to haggle. You fail. The merchant laughs. You have become part of the entertainment. At the port, you watch ivory, gold, frankincense, and sadly, human lives, loaded onto ships bound for distant lands. The Swahili coast was never isolated. It was plugged into a global web long before most of Europe knew the Indian Ocean existed. And then night falls. The Adhan, call to prayer, rises from a coral minaret. The sky turns plum dark. You sit on a rooftop as your host pours kahawa chungu, bitter coffee brewed with cloves. He tells you stories not written in books, about sea spirits, about the island that floats, about the ghosts who board dhows at midnight. Zanzibar is dreamlike, yes, but dreams have teeth. For all its beauty, this coast also bears the scars of slave chains, colonial betrayal, and palaces reduced to rubble. A hush falls over the city. In the distance, a drum beat rises, then another. You do not know whether it marks celebration or warning. You fall asleep unsure whether you're still in history or have slipped into myth. Chapter 23, Ethiopia's stone churches and sky castles. Faith carved from mountains, fire kept by kings. You wake up to the scent of roasted barley and wood smoke. The air is crisp, thin, and laced with birdsong you've never heard before. You are in Axumite country, a place where faith, stone, and sky weave together like braided thread. First, let's get one thing straight. Ethiopia was never colonized. While much of Africa would buckle under foreign boots, this highland kingdom would remain fiercely independent, its monarchs tracing their lineage all the way back to Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And you? You're here in the 12th century, just in time to see something that still makes modern engineers sweat: the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela. Yes, churches, but not built. Carved down into the mountains. You stand on the edge of a cliff, looking down into a chasm where an entire cruciform cathedral has been sculpted out of red, volcanic rock. Not a single brick, not a single beam, just a giant mountain, hollowed into holiness. You're told it was built by angels. You're also told it was built by King Lalibela, who had a dream that Jerusalem must be recreated in Africa. So he did, with thousands of workers, with decades of labor, with faith that could move literal mountains. You step inside one of these churches. It's dim, cool. A priest in white robes chants softly, swinging a censer of frankincense. A carved cross glows faintly in the filtered light. You feel time slow, bend, and exhale. Later, you eat injera and shiro with a family of monks. They speak of ancient manuscripts written in Ge'ez, an old Semitic tongue whose alphabet looks like it was designed by candlelight. They say that somewhere, hidden in the highlands, is the Ark of the Covenant. Yes, that Ark, protected by monks who never speak and never leave. And if that weren't enough, Ethiopia has castles, real ones, stone turrets, thick walls, battlements. In Gondar, you wander through the ruins of an African Camelot, built centuries before Europe even heard of Ethiopia. You meet the Facilides dynasty, kings who built libraries, held lion hunts, and experimented with gunpowder cannons. Some rode into battle on war elephants. Others fasted for weeks to earn visions. All of them claimed divine descent. And still, Ethiopia was no hermit kingdom. Traders came from Arabia, Persia, India, even Armenia and Byzantium. Their coins, bones, and silks lie buried beneath the very paths you stumble over. As the sun sets, the mountains turn bronze, then violet. A shepherd boy sings to his goats. The horizon is a jagged heartbeat of hills and cloud. Somewhere in the dark, a hyena cackles. A monk hands you a scroll, hand-painted, edged in gold leaf. It shows St. George slaying the dragon, but here he has dark skin and Amharic script halos. You feel you've stepped into a storybook from a world that rewrote the rules. Faith here is not soft. It is chiseled. Fasting, feasting, fighting, praying, all with equal passion. You lie under the stars again. Closer now, sharper at this altitude. A nun is singing somewhere behind stone walls. You don't understand the words, but you understand the feeling. Chapter 24. The Kingdom of Benin. Bronzes, blood, and the art of power. You arrive at dawn. The air is heavy with dew and drum beats. Ahead lies the ancient Kingdom of Benin. No, not the modern-day Republic of Benin, but the heart of what is now southern Nigeria. It is the 15th century, and Benin is in its prime. Powerful, mysterious, and stunningly sophisticated. The first thing you see are the walls. They stretch for hundreds of miles, not tall like European castles, but wide, layered earthworks, dug and packed over centuries by hand. A marvel of engineering so vast, some call it the largest earthwork in pre-modern history, second only to the Great Wall of China. Inside, the city buzzes. You hear bell gongs, smell palm oil and wood smoke, and see people moving with purpose. Blacksmiths, traders, priests, and warriors, all wrapped in rich textiles dyed with indigo, camwood, and ochre. Then you see him, the Oba, the divine king of Benin. His face is serene, unreadable like a mask. He wears coral beads, necklaces, bracelets, even a coral crown, red as fire and worth their weight in kingdoms. The Oba does not speak casually. He speaks through a crier who shouts each word with ritualistic cadence. You are summoned, awkwardly, to the palace, if you can call it that. It is not a single building, but a sprawling complex of courtyards, shrines, bronze pillars, and open-air galleries. And inside are the Benin bronzes. Your breath stops. Dozens of bronze plaques, cast using the lost wax method, line the walls. They depict obas, warriors, leopards, servants, Portuguese traders, battles, processions, ceremonies. A whole civilization, frozen in glimmering metal. The craftsmanship is astonishing. Symmetrical, elegant, lifelike. You wonder how such precision existed in a time Europeans were still drawing stick figures in marginalia. But the bronzes are more than art. They're politics. Every piece shows who ruled, who bowed, who bled. They are history books, royal propaganda, and sacred objects all at once. You're shown one plaque of an Oba standing atop a pile of defeated enemies. Another of the royal court flanked by swordsmen with leopard-tooth collars. You begin to understand. Benin was not a soft place. You hear stories from the royal court of the Ibiwi, the queen mother, who wielded near equal power to the Oba and ruled from her own palace. Of leopard hunters who served the king with tooth and claw. Of bronze casters, born into guilds, sworn to secrecy, their workshops passed down for generations like holy temples of metallurgy. Later, you walk through the city markets. You see ivory masks, brass bells, iron-tipped spears, and red caps that denote power and privilege. You try to buy a trinket. The merchant scoffs. You're offered a cowrie shell instead. You are being tested. At sunset, a royal procession begins. Horns blare, Dancers twirl, warriors march. The oba rides on a platform, shadowed by attendants with fans and blades. The people bow, not just in respect, but in reverence. To defy the oba is not merely treason, it is cosmic imbalance. And just as night falls, you're taken to a shrine. Here, the walls are lined with skulls, enemy generals, rebels, maybe a few unfortunate traitors. You realize the oba rules with beauty and brutality. Benin is not a kingdom of either or. It is a kingdom of and. The city glows under torchlight. Drums throb like a second heartbeat. You feel overwhelmed, humbled, and completely out of place. You stumble back to your quarters, your brain ringing with bronze. This was no tribal outpost. This was a cosmic empire, ruled by a god king, where art was sharper than steel. And you wouldn't last a day. Chapter 25, Congo and the Cross, Kingdoms, Crusades, and the First Baptized Kings, 620 to 645. It begins not with war, but with baptism. You arrive in the Kingdom of Congo around the year 1491, and you are very confused. Because in the middle of Central Africa, hundreds of miles from the nearest European port, you hear Latin prayers. You're in Mbanza, Congo, the royal capital, and it's unlike anything you've seen before. There are palaces here, real ones, built with stone and wood. There are nobles in embroidered robes. And above it all rises a cathedral. Yes, a Christian cathedral, where the king himself was baptized into the Catholic faith. But don't mistake this for colonization. The Congolese kings were not conquered. They were strategists. They saw the arrival of the Portuguese not as an invasion, but an opportunity. The king, Nzinga Nkuwu, later known as Juan I, converted voluntarily. Why? Because the church offered new tools, literacy, foreign alliances, firearms, and legitimacy in the eyes of Europe. And when his son, Alfonso I, took the throne, he didn't just practice Christianity, he mastered it. He wrote letters to the Pope in perfect Portuguese, requested missionaries and teachers, and established schools where Congolese nobles learned to read the Bible and write in Latin. But this was not a simple story of conversion. This was hybridization. The Kingdom of Congo didn't abandon its culture, it blended it. Churches were built on top of sacred groves. Saints were given Congo names and stories. Rituals merged. Catholic Mass was sung with local drums, communion mixed with ancestral libations. And while the kings wore crosses, they also wore leopard skins and iron anklets, symbols of Congo royalty. You're brought before a royal procession. The king, Alfonso I, rides in, flanked by bodyguards with feathered helms and muskets. A choir sings behind him. He greets a missionary with a handshake and a ritual blessing that predates Christianity by centuries. A noblewoman explains the layout of the kingdom. The Mana Congo, king, sits at the center of a complex web of vassal chiefs, all sworn to him by oaths, tribute, and ritual. Taxes are collected not in coins, but in raffia cloth, cowries, and copper crosses. Justice is enforced by judges trained in both local custom and biblical law. But not everything is peace and prayer. You overhear hushed talk of slave raids, not by outsiders, but between rival factions within the kingdom. Afonso writes to Portugal, begging them to stop unauthorized slavers from corrupting his domain. His words drip with desperation and fury. Each day, people are kidnapped. They even take nobles and royal family members. This is injustice. This is war disguised as trade. But the tide is hard to fight. The kingdom begins to fracture. Some nobles grow rich on slave trade. Others turn against the new religion. The Catholic Church sends more missionaries. Some are humble, others are not. You visit a hilltop where two altars face each other, one for Christ, one for the spirits of the forest. They are not rivals. They are partners in survival. A priest shows you a crucifix, its body carved from ivory, with patterns echoing old Congo motifs. You realize faith here has roots that go deeper than dogma. At a royal dinner, you taste stewed manioc, salted fish, and palm wine. A young prince plays a lute and sings in Kikongo, switching seamlessly into Portuguese. You're reminded that identity is not always a line. It is a river, wide and braided. By moonlight, you watch the stars. The southern sky is strange to you. A child says, "That one is the king's star." It guards the souls of warriors. You sleep under a roof that is part cathedral, part hut. And you wonder, what happens when belief systems merge? When swords become crosses and crosses become weapons? You're not sure. But you know you wouldn't survive here either. Not because it is cruel, but because it is too complex, too layered, too real. Chapter 26. The Swahili coast, palaces of coral, cloves, and calligraphy. You wake to the sound of waves. Not the crashing kind, the rhythmic, whispering kind that kisses coral shores and carries scents you can't name. You're in Kilwa, or maybe Mombasa, or Zanzibar, somewhere along the Swahili coast around the year 1300 AD. And this is not the Africa you imagined. This is a coast built by monsoons and merchants, where black stone palaces rise from coral and lime, and minarets cast long shadows over markets that smell like cardamom, cloves, and sun-dried octopus. You're in a city-state that speaks Kiswahili, a language that rolls off the tongue like poetry and pulls its roots from Bantu, Arabic, Persian, Gujarati, and Portuguese. Everyone here is multilingual. Everyone here knows how to negotiate. A boy passes carrying a basket of mangoes. He nods politely. His robe is striped, his hair oiled and curled. Behind him, a dhow glides across the Indian Ocean, its triangular sail cutting through blue like parchment through ink. Your host, a merchant scholar with henned hands, offers you spiced coffee. The house you're in is made of coral rag, its walls thick and cool, with windows carved like latticework lace. The interior smells like rose water and ink. "Do you read?" he asks. You hesitate. He claps, and a servant brings a leather-bound book. It's not a Bible. It's not even from here. It's a Persian manuscript on astronomy, translated into Arabic, annotated in Swahili. You open it and see the moon drawn in gold leaf. There are libraries here. Yes, real ones. Hidden behind spice stalls and curtain-draped alleyways, where pages from India, Egypt, and China are copied carefully by men in turbans with calloused hands. You walk the markets, souk-style labyrinths. One alley sells ivory combs and saffron, the next, Chinese porcelain and Yemeni daggers. You pass a street where gold is weighed in Zanj local scales and traded for embroidered silks. You're stunned. You were told this place was a backwater. Instead, it's a cosmopolitan hub, centuries before Europe even figured out how to bathe regularly. But here's the thing, you're still not ready for this life. The etiquette is foreign. You offered your left hand to a merchant. He recoiled. The food is too rich. Coconut rice, grilled fish, tamarind stew. Your stomach protests. You nearly fainted in the mosque courtyard after forgetting to remove your shoes. Still, they're kind to you. They assume you're just from very far inland. At sunset, the Adhan, call to prayer, echoes over the rooftops, but it's softer here, sung, not shouted. The entire city pauses. Even the waves seem to listen. And then, the music begins. Not drums this time, but oud, kanun, flute, and voice. Poetry recited under moonlight. Words so old, even the elders don't know who first spoke them. You don't understand a single line, but it touches something ancient in your bones. Someone hands you a clove. You chew. It burns, sweet and sharp. You're reminded that this Africa, this ocean-facing, book-loving, perfume-wearing Africa, is as real as any pyramid or warrior tale, and just as dangerous for the unprepared. You lie awake that night wondering, how many other Africas have I never been taught to see? Chapter 27, Ethiopia, Kingdom of the Lion, Land of the Burning Church. By now, your feet are blistered from deserts. Your tongue has tasted 7 kinds of millet, and your dreams echo with foreign prayers. But you're not done. No. Now you ascend. Up into the Ethiopian highlands, where clouds cling to jagged cliffs and the air smells like rosemary and ancient rock. Here, in the kingdom of Aksum's legacy, you'll meet lions, legends, and lava-hewn faith. Welcome to Ethiopia, land of the Solomonic dynasty, where Christianity runs deeper than cathedrals, and history is carved directly into the mountain. You arrive in Lalibela, a town that's not quite a town. It's a holy dream, etched into stone. The churches here were not built. They were excavated, chiseled downward from red volcanic rock, a feat that feels more like magic than masonry. You stare at Beit Georgis, the Church of St. George, from above. From this angle, it's a perfect Greek cross, carved straight into the earth like the gods pressed it there with a giant celestial stamp. Do you wish to go inside? A priest asks. You nod, wordless. You descend carved stairs into the cool, breathing dark. The inside smells of frankincense and centuries. A deacon chants in Ge'ez, a language older than most alphabets. The chant vibrates in your chest like the humming of bees. The cross, blackened from 1,000 kisses, is offered to you. You are very much not the first pilgrim to pass through here, or the 1,000th. But you feel as though the walls are watching, judging, remembering. Later, you're invited to sit with a scribe, an old man who writes with reed pen on parchment made of goat skin. He's copying psalms by hand. His tools? Charcoal, ochre, and a patience measured in decades. This one took 3 years, he says, showing you a gospel bound in wood and wrapped in leather. You must not rush the holy word. But Ethiopia's faith isn't just in books or churches. It's also in lineage. You are told, repeatedly, that the kings of Ethiopia descend from none other than King Solomon of Israel and the Queen of Sheba, whom they call Makeda. The story goes like this. She traveled to Jerusalem bearing gold and riddles. She returned with wisdom, treasure, and, possibly, a child. That child became Menelik the first emperor of Ethiopia. He, they say, brought the Ark of the Covenant with him. Yes, that Ark. You try not to look skeptical. But the locals are dead serious. There's even a chapel in Aksum where a monk guards the Ark to this very day. No one else may see it. No one. Ever. Would you like to visit it? They ask. You say yes. You are told only one man in the entire country has seen it, and he does not leave the room it's kept in. So, no, you can't visit. Instead, they show you scrolls of exorcism, crosses of intricate silver, and icons of Mary and Jesus painted in colors so rich they shimmer in candlelight. Christ here looks Ethiopian. So does the Virgin. You realize, with a jolt, that they probably always should have. At a royal hall, you meet a warrior monk. Yes, both. He recites scripture while sharpening his shotel, a sickle sword designed to hook beneath enemy shields. Ethiopia was never colonized, he reminds you. We keep the cross in one hand, the blade in the other. For dinner, injera, dorowat, and tej, a honey wine served in a round flask. It fizzes slightly, like a gentle rebellion. As the night winds down, someone begins singing, a wailing, wordless cry that slips through the darkness like smoke. A priest joins in, harmonizing in ge'ez. Then another. They form a circle. They sway. They dance, pray, feet stomping dust as rhythm becomes devotion. You don't understand the words, but your skin breaks out in goosebumps. You don't need translation. This is a place where myth is politics, where scripture is strategy, and where the past is not behind, but breathing beside you. Would you survive here? Probably not. But for one night, you float between incense and mountain air. And you believe, just for a moment, that stone can sing. Chapter 28. Warriors of the Zulu Kingdom. Shields, shaka, and strategy. You awaken to drumming. Not gentle, not ceremonial. Summoning. The rhythm grabs your bones before your brain catches up. You're not in Ethiopia anymore. You're deep in the south, in a land of lightning plains, thorny acacias, and barefoot war cries. Welcome to the heart of Zulu country. And no, you're not here during a peaceful era of basket weaving and quiet rain. You've arrived during the reign of Shaka Zulu, the military genius who turned a confederation of clans into a martial powerhouse that terrified empires. This isn't ancient Africa anymore. It's the early 1800s. Guns exist. But here, they're still considered inefficient. Spears are faster. You're handed a short stabbing spear called the ikolwa, named for the sound it makes when pulled out of a body. Comforting. Alongside it, a large cowhide shield. Light, flexible, and wide enough to hide behind, but not quite wide enough to hide your terror. Shaka's philosophy is simple. Mobility, formation, ruthlessness. Gone are the days of long-range spear tossing. No, Shaka trained his warriors to get close, too close, and finish it fast. His regiments march barefoot across thorn-strewn hills for days, just to prove their commitment. You're placed among the Impai, Zulu warrior regiments grouped by age and experience. You are not experienced. You are, however, extremely uncomfortable. The warriors chant in rhythm. Their shields slap the ground in unison. The earth trembles. You do not. You trip over your own spear within the first minute of a training drill. Someone hoists you up with a snort. You cannot tell if it's pity or disgust. At night, you expect sleep. Instead, you are taken to the kraal, a circular enclosure of huts guarded by cattle and men with eyes like flint. The air smells of smoke, sweat, and fermented sorghum. A sangoma, a spiritual healer, offers you snuff to speak with your ancestors. You politely decline. He laughs and sprinkles it directly onto your head. You sneeze so hard you nearly pass out. Everyone laughs, not cruelly, but you've been initiated into something ancient and unbending. Around the fire, stories are told, not with gentle nostalgia, but with strategy. Stories are maps. They explain who betrayed who fought with honor, and who was devoured by their own ambitions. Shaka's rise comes up again and again. How he exiled rivals, then recruited their followers. How he killed his half-brother with precision and calm. How he made loyalty not a request, but a law. You're told he redesigned the battlefield, introduced bullhorn formations, and turned what had been skirmishes into steamrolling dominance. The British, they wouldn't meet him for decades. But by the time they did, his legacy was already legend. Someone mentions Isandlwana, a battle still decades away in your timeline, but inevitable. There, Zulu warriors would annihilate British forces, shocking the empire to its polished boots. You shiver. Not from the cold, but because you realize you're in the presence of disciplined fury. The kind of fury that carries memory in every footstep. Come morning, the warriors vanish into the hills for drills. You're told to stay behind. Not because you're soft, but because your feet blister like a spoiled prince. You nod. You are a spoiled prince. But just before the impi disappears into the mist, a young warrior throws something at you. It's your ikalwa, sharpened, balanced. Next time, he says in isiZulu. You nod again, this time with less embarrassment, because you survived. Barely. Chapter 29. Island of Bones, Madagascar's ancient sorcery and forest kings. You awaken not in a village, not in a desert caravan, and certainly not in a kraal, but in a forest. And not just any forest. This one clicks. You blink. Something chirps, then clicks, then howls. You sit up and something leaps from a nearby tree and vanishes. Congratulations. You're on Madagascar, the massive island off Africa's east coast that broke away from the continent 88 million years ago and decided to do its own weird thing. And you are now its guest. This is not Africa, but with beaches. This is the land where everything evolved sideways. The trees around you twist upward like dancers. The vines move in the wind like whispers. And overhead, you hear the call of a lemur, Madagascar's most iconic primate. You think, oh, lemurs are cute. They are not cute. They are watching. You've arrived during the time of the Vazimba, the semi-mythical first inhabitants of Madagascar. Legends say they were tiny people with immense powers, able to vanish into mist and speak with the dead. Some say they were the original settlers. Others believe they still live deep in the highlands, far from the eyes of outsiders. And you are definitely an outsider. You're offered a place to sit. The ground is carpeted with zebu hide, Madagascar's sacred cattle. You see bones arranged around a small shrine, clean, polished, clearly respected. Your host is a forest king. His crown is made of woven leaves and silver beads, his expression serious, almost regal. He does not ask who you are, he already knows. He hands you a bowl of ranovola, toasted rice water, smoky, oddly satisfying. You drink it quickly, trying to be polite. Then he hands you a second bowl, this time filled with crushed bark and honey. You hesitate. He nods once. You drink. That's when the forest begins to pulse. Madagascar is not just a land of animals. It's a land of belief. Animism, ancestor worship, fady, taboos, and sorcery flow through daily life, like blood through veins. In this chapter of history, magic isn't metaphor, it's politics. Step in the wrong rivers on the wrong day, you've offended the spirits. Wear red in the wrong village, you've summoned a curse. Point at a tomb, may the ancestors never forgive you. You're taken through a ritual, not for protection, but for acceptance. A young woman draws sigils on your arms using charcoal and sap. An elder murmurs a blessing in Malagasy, so old it predates the current dialect. You are not being initiated, you are being tolerated. That night, a Fanarona board is laid out before you. An ancient game of strategy and tension, older than chess and still played today. You try to learn, but each move you make causes chuckles. Not ridicule, just the amusement of watching someone try to play checkers during a game of 5D prophecy. Your opponent, a boy no older than 10, wins in 5 moves. Twice. In the distance, a sacred hill glows in the moonlight. You're told it houses the remains of ancient queens, wrapped in silk, buried with perfumes, jewelry, and stories. The dead are not silent here. They speak through wind, leaves, and lemur eyes. You're warned. If you dream tonight, it might not be your dream. You sleep with one eye open. At dawn, the forest smells like cinnamon and mystery. You survive the night, which is more than most can say. Chapter 30. Iron, Empire, and the Benin Bronzes. Enter the Oba's court. You awaken to the sound of bells. Not alarm bells, not church bells, but elegant bronze bells, chiming in a pattern too precise to be random. You're no longer in the forests of Madagascar. You're in a city. But not just any city. You are in Benin, ancient and mighty, gleaming under the West African sun, encircled by deep moats, towering earthen ramparts, and an elegance of order that will leave you stunned. You've landed in Benin City, seat of the Edo people, and home to the Oba. A king not merely political, but spiritual, artistic, and utterly untouchable. The first thing you notice is symmetry. Streets arranged like ribs from a spine, radiating outward from the royal palace. People move with purpose. The city is clean, shockingly clean. You've just time-traveled into urban planning perfection, the kind even 21st century architects would take notes on. And then you see them, the bronzes, panels, heads, reliefs, stories etched in shining, complex metal. Warriors in ceremonial stands, traders carrying gifts, animals with mystical significance, faces both regal and worn. Each bronze is a book, and this city is the library. A herald stops you. He wears coral beads across his chest and a headdress of coiled cloth. He says nothing. He gestures. You follow. You're not being arrested. You're being summoned. Because the Oba wants to see you. Inside the palace courtyard, the temperature drops, not from wind, but from the sheer gravity of the space. Statues line the entrance. Elephants, leopards, sacred guardians of the king's authority. You are asked to kneel. Then comes the Oba, not walking but gliding, his robes a shimmering waterfall of white, red, and coral beads. His eyes unreadable, his presence larger than the carved throne he rests upon. He says nothing for a long time, just observes. Then finally, a whisper through a translator. Why are you dressed like a wandering spirit? You don't answer. You just bow. Smart move. You're not here for judgment. You're here for history. And the Oba's court is bursting with it. Diplomats from far-off kingdoms bring gifts. Salt, silk, glass beads. Ironworkers beat molten metal into shape with hypnotic rhythm. Priests chant by candlelight, consulting the Ifa, the divine oracle of Yoruba cosmology, woven deeply into Edo belief. Scribes scratch stories into ivory tusks, each curve a timeline. This is not a kingdom of chaos. This is a dynasty of order, maintained by art, ritual, law, and sometimes blood. You're told of the guilds, specialized families who control bronze casting, ivory carving, cloth weaving, and more. Knowledge is power, and here it's inherited. You try to ask questions, but no one answers. Not because they can't, because you haven't earned the right to ask. That evening, a ceremony begins. The Igbo festival, meant to renew the Oba's divine power. Dancers wear masks that reflect gods, ancestors, and jungle beasts. Drums speak languages older than speech itself. You lose yourself in the rhythm. And then, something shifts. You realize the people are no longer dancing for the Oba. They are dancing as the Oba. His power is not above them, it is among them. The line between ruler and people, divine and human, art and life, is gone. And as the firelight reflects off polished bronze, you understand something simple. In this city, to create is to remember. To cast a face in metal is to immortalize it. You, however, are not bronze. You are soft, bewildered, and still a little sunburned. Time to move on. Chapter 31. The Red Nile, Nubian Queens, Sacred Curses, and Lost Gold. You awaken with your back against cool stone and the scent of dust thick in your nostrils. It's not desert dust this time, it's temple dust. Smooth, ancient, sacred. Your eyes adjust to low light. Sandstone pillars rise above you, carved with symbols, not Egyptian hieroglyphs, but something different. Curvier, older in style, still powerful. You're in Nubia, specifically in Meroe, capital of the Kingdom of Kush, a civilization so fierce and forgotten. History had to be reminded of its existence by archaeologists armed with chisels and divine curiosity. Above you, through a carved lintel, the sun streams in, blood red as it rises over the Nile. Not the blue ribbon of postcards, but the red Nile of the south, where it cuts through granite hills and echoes with secrets. And before you, on a stone dais, sits a woman. She wears a crown and a sword. This is Amanirenas, Kandake, warrior queen, eye patch-wearing symbol of resistance against Rome itself. Yes, that Rome. When Caesar's empire reached down toward Nubia, she said no, then proved it with elephants, archers, and a military campaign so fierce the Romans agreed to a peace treaty that lasted for decades. She's not smiling at you. She doesn't have to. You're led out of the temple into the rising heat. The land around you is dotted with pyramids, smaller than Egypt's, but steeper, sharper, and cloaked in gold dust. Tombs of queens and kings, untouched by time but not by myth. Your guide is a priest, silent, cloaked, and holding a fan made of vulture feathers. He points out a pyramid with a curse carved into its base, warning looters of blindness, madness, and irreversible diarrhea. A shrine to Amun, where offerings of beer and honey are left beside ancient statues with lion heads and crocodile tails. A well still bubbling from sacred springs, said to reveal dreams of the future if you stare too long. You try, you see a spreadsheet, you stop. By midday, you're taken downriver in a reed canoe. The banks are alive with egrets, hippos, and thyme. You spot farmers using ancient irrigation wheels, children diving from sandbars, and priests painting charms on goats' foreheads. At a river bend, your boat stops. You're told to disembark. There, half buried in reeds, lies a statue with no eyes. It once stood in a palace. Now it's here, silent witness to golden ages in ruin. A campfire meal is shared. Sorghum bread, dried fish, and a thick, sour beer. You're told tales of how the Kushites once ruled Egypt as pharaohs, the 25th dynasty. Of how their temples echoed Nubian accents, not Cairo's. Of gold veins so rich, the kings wore rings on every toe. You're also warned, never speak the name of the desert wind that devours caravans. It hears. That night, you lie beneath stars that feel heavier here. A storm rumbles in the distance. Drums echo from across the river. The Red Nile churns like it remembers empires no one else does. You ask a woman by the fire, what happened to the Kandake queens? She smiles. They became stories. And now, those stories live in you. You survive another day. But barely. Chapter 32. Walking with gods, Yoruba myths, talking statues, in the forest of 401 deities, you wake to drums. but not war drums. These are softer, hypnotic, a pattern that repeats, loops, swirls into your bones like perfume made of sound. You're in the thick forests of what is now southwestern Nigeria, lush, green, and steaming with life. This is Yoruba land. And today, you're not walking through history. You're walking through mythology. A priestess greets you. She's wearing beads of red and white, a headdress that looks part bird, part crown. She offers you water in a calabash, then gestures for you to follow. You do, because in this forest, nothing happens without meaning. Each tree has a name. Each root twists with purpose. The air is thick, not just with humidity, but with stories. You come to a clearing where stones rise from the ground like frozen spirits. Carved faces stare back at you, some smiling, some solemn, some unblinking in ways that feel unsettlingly lifelike. These are Orisha shrines, not idols, not statues. These are the doorways to divine presence. There is Ogun, the god of iron and war, his shrine surrounded by tools and rusted blades. There's Sango the Thunderer, said to split the sky when angered. His shrine smells faintly of gunpowder and charred wood. And there, with flowing water, is Oshun, the goddess of rivers, love, fertility. Her statue is worn smooth by the touch of countless hands seeking blessing or forgiveness. You're invited to participate in a ceremony, not because you're special, but because you're here. They dress you in white. A chicken is offered, not harmed, just shown to the sky, then released. Music begins. Drums, flutes, rattles made of gourds and bones. Dancers whirl around a central fire, their movements more trance than choreography. One of them falls, shaking, then stands still, eyes blank. The priestess nods. The Orisha has arrived. Through the dancer, a voice speaks. Not in English, not in Yoruba, but in something older. The words swirl in your ears like heat. You understand nothing, and somehow, everything. The message is not a prophecy, but a reminder. You are dust and breath, so act accordingly. After the trance breaks, you are taken deeper into the forest. There's an ancient grove called Osun Osogbo, a UNESCO site in your world, but here, a living temple. You see sculptures by the German-Nigerian artist Suzanne Wenger, towering and surreal, blending modern art with ancient faith. The spirits here do not mind cameras, but they don't pose for them either. A boy hands you a mask, you put it on. Just for a moment, you see the world differently. The trees shimmer, the stones hum, the insects' buzzing sounds like distant speech. You remove the mask quickly, too quickly. Something laughs in the leaves. That night, as you lie in a hut near the sacred river, the wind brings with it whispers. Not frightening, just firm. This land was never godless. It was never primitive. It was sacred before pyramids, before cathedrals, before asphalt and electricity. You don't sleep easily, but you do sleep. Chapter 33, African Time Machines. The Dogon, Sirius B, and the people who knew the stars too well. You awaken not on a bed, but on a stone ledge halfway up a cliff. The sun hasn't risen yet. The sky is still navy blue, littered with more stars than you've ever seen. You're in Mali again, but far from the dusty villages and camel caravans. You're among the Dogon people, nestled in the Bandiagara escarpment, a winding cliffside sanctuary older than most of the world's cities. And as your eyes adjust, you see them, the stars. Closer, brighter, talking. A man sits next to you, face painted with ash, his body marked with symbolic tattoos. He wears a goatskin cloak and holds a staff carved with spirals. He does not greet you. He simply says, "They told us about Sirius." You blink. You're still not quite sure what century you're in. See, the Dogon have held a knowledge so impossible, so out of time, that Western scientists once refused to believe it until telescopes caught up. They knew that Sirius, the brightest star in Earth's sky, had a companion star, Sirius B, an invisible white dwarf, undetectable to the naked eye. They knew it revolved around Sirius A every 50 years. They knew it was the heaviest thing in the sky, despite being invisible. They knew too much. How? That's the question you've been dropped here to wrestle with. You follow the Elder through the winding pathways carved into the cliffside. Granaries and ceremonial homes cling to the rock like ancient spider webs. Inside a cave, walls are painted with symbols, the Nomo they're called, amphibious ancestral spirits from the sky who came to Earth in a spinning vessel, bringing wisdom, agriculture, and language. You stare at one of the symbols. It looks like a rocket or a DNA helix or something in between. The Elder laughs as if reading your mind. "You think we learned these things by accident?" he asks. "We watched, we waited, we remembered." Midday heat forces you into shade. A boy brings you millet beer and roasted baobab seeds. A woman sings as she grinds grains, her song flowing with a rhythm that feels like math. Everything here is precise, ritual, cosmic. You're taken to a Hogon, a high priest who has not touched the ground in months. His home smells of smoke, age, and something metallic. He speaks in riddles as if he's talking through time. Before pyramids, before writing, we knew the heavens were not silent. We mapped them on sand, on skin, on stone. You are just catching up. You ask about telescopes, about Galileo, about modern astronomy. He shakes his head. You needed glass to see. We only needed memory. That night, a ceremony begins. The Sigui festival, held every 60 years, is being rehearsed, even though it's not time yet. A practice run, because time, for the Dogon, is not linear. It loops, spirals, dances. Masks taller than men are brought out, Kanaga masks with crossbars that point in all directions. Dancers leap and twist, reenacting the creation of the universe, the arrival of the Nomo, the births of stars, the shaping of man from clay and breath. The drums shake the cliff. You cry, and you're not sure why. Later, alone under the stars again, the Elder hands you a stone. Black, smooth, he says. "This fell from the sky, like you." You ask him, "Are the Nomo real?" He smiles, looking up at the stars. What is real? What is remembered? The Dogon didn't need Hubble. They had stories, and some of them, apparently, still remember the future. Chapter 34. The Congo Kingdom. Sacred kings, cursed crowns, and the first African diplomats. You're walking now through a place that feels European, but isn't. There are stone buildings, roads planned with method, and men wearing robes, not rags, made of silk and velvet. Banners fly, drums announce arrivals, nobles walk with swords and speak in perfect Portuguese, but you are in Central Africa. Somewhere between the Atlantic coast and the dense forests of modern-day Angola and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Welcome to the Kingdom of Congo, circa 1491. Just in time for a royal conversion, a diplomatic crisis, and a complete meltdown of your expectations. Your eyes widen as you approach Mbanza, Congo, the capital. It's not a mud village or a tribal camp. It's a fully functioning kingdom with provinces, tax systems, a standing army, and a post office. Yes, that's right. While most of Europe was still dealing with plague rats and mud streets, Congo had mail service. You are brought before the Mani Congo, the king himself. His name? Nzinga Ainkuwu. But you'll soon know him by another name, Juan I. He's dressed like a European noble, but sits on a carved wooden throne beneath symbols far older than Christianity. His court is a mixture of indigenous advisors, Catholic missionaries, and ambassadors who argue in multiple languages, some from Africa, some from Portugal. He speaks to you through a translator. You look lost, he says. You are, because you're in a kingdom that already figured out how to talk to Europe while still being entirely African. The king tells you he was baptized recently, a result of diplomatic contact with the Portuguese. He's curious about this Christian God. He's seen their ships, their Bibles, their firepower, but he's not naive. He's playing chess. Faith is one thing, he says. Politics, that's another. His son, Afonso, is even more intense. A scholar, a writer, a true believer. He will one day write letters to the King of Portugal, demanding justice, education, and proper behavior from the European merchants who have begun exploiting African lives. You're handed a copy of a letter dictated by Afonso himself. It reads, "There are many traders in all the provinces. They bring ruin to our kingdom. They snatch our people, sons of the land, and sons of our noblemen and vassals, and cause them to be sold as slaves." You blink. This isn't the script you were taught. This isn't a kingdom being discovered. This is a kingdom resisting. As the evening falls, you walk the royal court. You pass an iron cross mounted on a wall next to a shrine of Nzambi Mpungu, the high god of Congo. Catholicism here doesn't replace African religion. It sits alongside it, like two kings sharing a crown. A priest explains, when we baptize, we don't erase. We translate. You visit schools. Yes, there are schools. Teaching Latin, theology, diplomacy, and African history. Some of these students will one day be priests in Europe. Others will write the earliest dictionaries of African languages using Roman script. And yet, beneath this sophistication, tension bubbles. You're led into the royal armory, swords, spears, guns, armor. Gifts, the steward says, and warnings. Because the Portuguese are no longer just visitors, they're merchants, missionaries, and soon colonizers. The kingdom is balancing on a knife's edge: trade, faith, power. And the price of diplomacy is rising. You meet a young boy, barefoot, smiling, learning to read. He will be taken to Portugal, taught, groomed, Christianized. He'll return with fire in his heart, either to build bridges or to burn them. At a feast that night, the king raises a cup. "To the future," he says. You hesitate, because you've seen that future. And it includes betrayal, enslavement, and the eventual fall of this remarkable kingdom. But tonight, the fires burn, the dancers whirl, and the Congo kingdom stands, not as a footnote, but as a force. Chapter 35. The Zulu Dawn, spears, strategy, and the man who terrified the British Empire. You awaken this time not in a village or a palace, but in the middle of a wide, open plain. The air smells like iron and sweat. Your ears are filled with the low hum of chanting voices, thousands of them, rising and falling like waves. When you open your eyes, you are surrounded by warriors. Bare-chested, shield-bearing, eyes forward, you are in the land of the Zulu. And standing at the center of this human storm is the man himself, Shaka Kasenzanga Kona, better known as Shaka Zulu, the military genius, the nation builder, the nightmare of the British Empire. And he is training. Your heart pounds as you watch. These aren't just men practicing for a festival. They are part of an empire, a warrior regiment forged through fire and discipline. Their feet strike the ground in unison. Dust clouds rise. Their Ikolwa spears, short, stabbing weapons designed to kill up close, gleam in the morning light. Shaka walks among them, silent but commanding. He doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. His presence alone bends the air. You're handed a shield. Leather, oval, heavy. A spear, too short for throwing. You hesitate. A warrior laughs. You stab, stranger, not toss. You're thrown into formation. A wall of shields surrounds you. Then movement, a charge. You stumble, fall. A spear nearly takes your ear off. Accidentally, you hope. Shaka watches. Pain, he says, is learning. You're helped up by a boy who looks 12, but has the posture of a war veteran. We do not fight because we are angry, he says. We fight because we remember. By midday, you're taken to Shaka's court, Kwabulawayo, a capital more feared than celebrated. But don't expect gold or stone. This kingdom isn't built for opulence. It's built for order, regimented huts, tactical placement. Nothing is random. Shaka receives you on a leopard skin beneath a burning sun. His gaze is sharp, his frame tall and lean, his aura lethal. He gestures to a pile of confiscated weapons, British muskets, Boer rifles, Portuguese sabers. They brought their thunder, he says, but we brought the storm. And he's right. Shaka revolutionized African warfare. He restructured the Zulu army into age-based regiments, developed the horns of the buffalo tactic, encirclement perfected, made the Zulu impi a machine of shock and awe. But there's more to him than blood and blades. At night, in quieter circles, Zulu poets, Izimbongi, chant the praises and tragedies of Shaka's reign. They speak of his rise from exile, his brutal reforms, his brother's betrayal, his descent into paranoia. Shaka was the spear that bled both enemy and kin, one elder says. He built a nation, and he drowned it in grief. You listen, trying to balance the myth with the man, warrior or tyrant, visionary or monster. History doesn't answer, it only echoes. Before you leave, you're brought to a battlefield, the site of the infamous Battle of Isandlwana, years after Shaka's time, but born of his legacy. Here, in 1879, Zulu warriors, many trained by his methods, annihilated a British column. Over 1,300 redcoats fell. Rifles beaten by strategy, discipline, sheer will. You stand in the wind, looking at the cairns of white stones left where soldiers died, and you realize this was never a primitive land. It was a land of empires, of minds sharpened like spears, of kings who dreamed bigger than maps allowed. Chapter 36. Great Zimbabwe. Lost cities, stone giants, and the civilization they didn't want you to know existed. You've walked through forests and deserts, knelt before kings, staggered beneath the Sahelian sun, and narrowly avoided being trampled by a camel. But now, you stand still. In front of you looms a wall, stone, ancient, enormous. But not just any wall. This is Great Zimbabwe, and you weren't supposed to know it existed. The stones are stacked without mortar, but they haven't moved in centuries. They spiral, curve, and rise into towers and enclosures that seem to defy logic. Some walls reach over 30 feet high and extend for hundreds of meters. This is not a hut. This is not a ruin. This is a city, and it was built entirely by Africans. You step into the great enclosure, a structure so massive, it's visible from space. The passageways are narrow, deliberate, not made for function alone, but for ceremony, mystery, power. It's part palace, part fortress, part cosmic riddle. A guide walks beside you, brushing dust from a carved soapstone bird, a relic of the Zimbabwe bird, the national symbol today. She points to the terraces, the stone towers, the hidden corridors. "We built this," she says, "my ancestors." And she's right. This was the capital of the Kingdom of Zimbabwe, at its height between the 11th and 15th centuries. A hub of gold, ivory, and culture, part of a vast trade network stretching from China to Persia to India, all the way to the Swahili coast. You enter what once was a royal compound. You see signs of a civilization that planned, engineered, governed, and traded with the world. Archaeologists found Chinese porcelain, Arabian coins, and Persian glass beads here. You find a ceremonial platform. A fire once burned here. Kings gave orders here. Lives changed here. And yet for centuries, European explorers who stumbled across Great Zimbabwe refused to believe the truth. They claimed it must have been built by Phoenicians, Greeks, Arabs, aliens, anyone but Africans. Why? Because they couldn't accept that a black civilization could build something so grand. The guide hands you a fragment of soapstone. "This bird," she says, "saw it all. The kings, the rise, the fall, the forgetting." You stare at the symbol, the Zimbabwe bird, proud and poised. She continues, "We had mathematics, astronomy, city planning, justice. We didn't vanish. We were buried beneath lies." As night falls over the stone towers, you sit in silence. Bats flutter through the corridors. The walls glow faintly under starlight. And for the first time, you realize how little you were taught and how much was erased, not lost, just hidden. And now, found again. Chapter 37, Swahili Coast, Coral Palaces, Arabian Nights, and the Ocean Empire of East Africa. You wake now not to the sound of goats or warriors, but to waves, the soft hush of the Indian Ocean lapping against the stone piers of a city that smells like cardamom, salt air, and smoldering incense. Welcome to the Swahili Coast, a strip of East African magic stretching from modern-day Somalia to Mozambique, dotted with city-states that, at their height, glittered like pearls in the sun. You're in Kilwa, sometime in the 14th century, a time when this place was one of the richest trading ports in the world. And trust us, you are drastically underdressed for the occasion. You shuffle down the cobbled path in sandals made from woven palm fronds. The buildings here are unlike anything you've seen in Africa so far. Built from coral stone and painted white, they rise in archways and balconies, shaded with wooden shutters carved in elegant geometric patterns. Arabic calligraphy flows over the walls. Persian rugs hang from doorways. Minarets rise above the rooftops. You hear the call to prayer in the distance, echoing softly through the breeze like the memory of a lullaby. This is Islamic Africa, not a recent arrival, but a centuries-old part of the coast's identity. Your guide for the day is a teenage merchant's apprentice who introduces himself with a bow and perfect Arabic. "My grandfather speaks Persian," he says proudly, "and my mother's mother comes from Gujarat." This is a world of cultural fusion, African, Arab, Persian, Indian. You hear Swahili, but laced with words from every port on the Indian Ocean. You're taken to the market, souk, and suddenly it feels like you've stepped into a scene from a storybook. Ivory from the interior, gold from Great Zimbabwe, silk from China, spices from India, books from Cairo, slaves from the mainland. Yes, the brutal truth is that human lives were part of this system too. The merchant shows you a ledger, written in Arabic, tracking shipments from Mogadishu, Malindi, Lamu, Zanzibar, Sofala. Each port a node in an oceanic web of trade that was thriving centuries before Portuguese ships even dreamed of rounding the Cape. You're offered a bowl of sweet coconut rice and grilled fish. You eat under a domed coral ceiling as a storyteller begins to speak, part history, part legend. He tells of Sinbad-like sailors, of dhow captains who navigated by stars and monsoon winds, of mosques that sang with knowledge and schools that taught logic, law, and love. He tells you of the great Mosque of Kilwa, one of the oldest in sub-Saharan Africa, of Shirazi sultans who ruled like philosopher kings, of coral palaces that no longer exist, but still echo in the dreams of the waves. At sunset, you're taken aboard a dhow, a slender sailboat made for trade and poetry. The sail flutters like a wing as the sky turns gold. As the wind carries you from the coral-lined shores, your guide whispers, "They thought we were forgotten, but the ocean remembers." And as the stars rise and the ocean hums, you feel it. This was never the edge of the world. It was its beating heart. Chapter 38. Mountains of the Moon, the Kingdom of Buganda and the Lost Empires of the Great Lakes. Now the ocean fades. The breeze thickens. The air grows cooler, wetter, heavier with mist. You've climbed inland, higher and higher, to a place once believed by Greek geographers to house the very source of the Nile, the fabled Mountains of the Moon. Welcome to the Great Lakes region of Africa, the land of Buganda, Bunyoro, and Katara, kingdoms with drums louder than empires and stories taller than mountains. And you are hopelessly unprepared for the altitude. You're in Buganda, sometime in the 17th century. The hills roll out like green carpets soaked in fog. Great Lake Victoria shimmers beyond the horizon, an inland sea teeming with hippos and mystery. You arrive in a kibuga, a royal capital made of thousands of huts, fields, and palisades encircling a massive royal enclosure. This is not a dusty village. This is a centralized government, a bureaucratic machine, an organized, militarized kingdom, and it runs on drums. The royal drums of Buganda are not for music alone. They are tools of governance, announcements, orders, decrees. The king, or Kabaka, commands his people across hills and lakes with a code of rhythms passed through generations. One pattern means taxes are due. Another signals war. Another welcomes visitors like yourself. You've arrived at the gates of the Kabaka's court, and the guards step aside with ceremonial spears tipped in iron. You are led to the royal compound, vast, domed, woven from reeds and mystery. Inside, you are instructed to crawl. Yes, crawl. No one walks upright before the Kabaka unless invited. It's not humiliation, it's respect. The king is not just a man. He is the living embodiment of the nation, chosen, sacred, guarded by ancestral spirits. You crawl, and you find yourself face to face with a ruler cloaked in bark cloth, eyes sharp and unblinking. Behind him, advisors, elders, spirit mediums, and warriors whisper, nod, and judge. Buganda is not a primitive kingdom. It has roads, clans, titles, laws, taxes, vassal chiefs, and a standing army. It has land tenure systems, inheritance codes, and a belief that its people were born from the lake, the sky, and the ancestors themselves. The Kabaka listens. He speaks, and you are dismissed, not rudely, but like a leaf blown on the wind. Outside, you are shown the royal tombs, vast earth mounds where past kings sleep surrounded by the spirits of the dead. The rain begins to fall softly, a priest kneels beside a fire and sings to the ancestors. You watch, and for the first time, you understand something. This is not a forgotten place. This is a memory that never died. Chapter 39. Fire and Iron. The warrior queens and matriarchs of ancient Africa. You've survived kings, deserts, and drum codes. You've waded through millet porridge, dodged goats, and negotiated with griots. You may think you've seen it all, but you haven't met Africa's queens. And no, not just queens in name. We mean sword-bearing, empire-commanding, enemy-crushing leaders who made even the boldest men in history think twice. These aren't bedtime fairy tale monarchs. These are the Stormbringers. You are about to meet the women who ruled with fire, iron, and the whispered will of ancestors. You're taken now to northern Angola, sometime in the early 1600s. Portuguese muskets glint on the horizon, and an entire kingdom is preparing for war. At the center stands Nzinga Mbande, queen of Ndongo and Matamba. She's dressed in flowing red, her face painted with ash, her gaze unblinking. You're told that when she first negotiated with the Portuguese, and they offered her no seat, she called for a servant to kneel down, creating a throne from his back. That's the kind of woman you're dealing with. Queen Nzinga doesn't just rule. She commands armies. She leads guerrilla campaigns against colonial forces, forges alliances with other African kingdoms, and even outmaneuvers European diplomats in their own languages. She converts to Christianity for diplomacy, then leads spiritual ceremonies in ancestral shrines. She plays chess on two boards, one of politics, one of battle. And she never loses. You try to keep up with her entourage, but you're winded after 10 minutes. They march through swamps. You get bit by leeches. They conduct military drills in full heat. You beg for water. Nzinga is unfazed. You're told she ruled for nearly 40 years, died of old age, and even in death, made the Portuguese sweat. But this is just the beginning. Further east, in the 19th century, you meet Queen Muhumuza, a spiritual medium and rebel leader from Rwanda who defied both the German and British colonial authorities. She was said to speak with the voice of a god. She led armed resistance, not just with weapons, but with faith, fear, and the force of her presence. Captured and exiled? Yes. Defeated? Never. To her people, she remained a symbol of unbending resistance. And then, there is the firestorm of West Africa herself. Queen Amina of Zazzau, modern-day Nigeria, from the 16th century. You're led through the great walls said to have been built by her order, city fortifications still standing centuries later. Amina rode into battle like a comet, wielding a sword said to flash like lightning. She led her armies on campaigns stretching hundreds of kilometers and expanded her territory to unprecedented lengths. She's remembered in Hausa legend as the woman as capable as a man. But those who knew her scoffed at such faint praise. She wasn't as capable as a man. A griot whispers. She made men more capable by comparison. You sit now at a fire, surrounded by women of the royal court, priestesses, warriors, and counselors. They pass around bowls of palm wine, beads of power, and stories old enough to turn blood cold. One of them looks at you and smiles. You were taught we were weak, she says, but look closer. And as the fire dances in her eyes, you do. And finally, you see. Chapter 40. The Leopard Kings, Benin's bronzes, blood, and the art of power. You're guided now into the thick, muggy rainforests of southern Nigeria. where the leaves hang like curtains and the air buzzes with the whisper of spirits. The trail narrows, the forest opens, and there it stands, Benin City, circa the 16th century. But this isn't a tribal village. This is a fortified capital, a city of wide boulevards, straight as arrows, flanked by moats and earthen walls so massive that European explorers wrote home in disbelief. You have entered the kingdom of Benin, home of the Oba, the leopard king, and oh, you are not ready. You are ushered past ivory-carved totems, bronze plaques glittering in the morning sun, and guards in scarlet robes holding spears tipped with iron. The palace complex stretches ahead, multiple courtyards, terracotta towers, and shrines humming with offerings. It smells of smoke, palm oil, and polished brass. This place was a marvel before Europe knew how to find its own shoelaces. When London was still muddling through the mud, Benin had tax codes, diplomatic embassies, and urban planning. The Oba of Benin does not speak to you, not yet. To address him without ritual is a crime against protocol. You're led into a side chamber and offered kola nuts and spiced stew. You eat nervously. There are skulls on a nearby altar. Human, decorated, grinning. You try not to look. Too late. Eventually, you're brought before the Oba, seated beneath a canopy of coral beads and flanked by his Ezomo, military chief, Yasun, senior queen mother, and priests of the earth goddess. The Oba's gaze is deep, ageless, like bronze itself. And in that moment, you understand why they call him a leopard. He doesn't pounce, he waits, then strikes. But Benin isn't just about fear, it's about precision, power, and artistry. Everywhere, bronze castings glisten with narrative. Court scenes, battles, processions, legends frozen in metal. You realize you've seen these in museums, behind glass, sterile and silent. But here, they're alive. You're told the bronze plaques serve as history books, crafted by the guilds, passed down through secret apprenticeship. Techniques so advanced, the lost wax casting method wouldn't be matched in Europe for centuries. There's a plaque of a European merchant kneeling before the Oba. Another shows warriors dancing under a solar eclipse. Another, most chilling, displays a ritual sacrifice. You flinch. Power must be fed, says the priest beside you. You nod, very slowly. You're not a guest. You are a witness to power, unlike anything you've seen. A power that ruled through ceremony, spectacle, and brutal elegance. As you leave the palace, a child runs past you with a carved wooden mask. He giggles. You follow him through winding alleys of artisans, musicians, and drummers rehearsing for the next Ige festival, a celebration that lasts days and rattles the ancestors. You wonder, will the West ever understand this world? Will it see Benin as it was, not savage, but sacred? Chapter 41. Horns of the Zulu. Shaka's shadow in the kingdom that shook the British Empire. The air has changed. It smells of thunder before it strikes. You are no longer in forests nor deserts. This is the open savanna of southern Africa, where the grass sways like blades and silence carries a drumbeat of tension. A man stands before you, tall, bare-chested, with a gaze that pierces bone. He is Shaka Zulu, the bull that could not be gored, the warrior king who carved an empire with blood, sweat, and fear. And you have arrived in the time of revolution. Shaka does not speak like kings you've met before. He speaks like a storm, short, sharp, and final. You are brought into the heart of the Zulu kingdom, and what you see shakes you. Thousands of warriors move in perfect formation, not a rabble, but a machine. They drill with Ikalwa spears, short stabbing weapons designed not for throwing, but for closing in. For feeling the breath of the man you're about to kill. Their feet beat a thunder rhythm into the earth. Dust clouds rise. You try to keep the rhythm. You don't. You fall. They don't laugh. You don't even exist to them. Shaka transformed the Zulu from a minor clan into a military juggernaut that would rewrite the map of Africa. He introduced the buffalo horns formation, chest, horns, and loins. Encircle, trap, destroy. It wasn't just strategy. It was psychological warfare. He drilled his warriors to run barefoot on thorns until their soles became leather. He replaced hide shields with larger ones, blackened for intimidation. He executed officers for cowardice. And yet, his army loved him. They sang his name before battle. They carried his vision like it was religion. And they knew, so long as Shaka lived, they were unstoppable. You're taken to a gathering, an Impai council. Fires crackle, warriors chant, meat sizzles on stone. No one sits until the elders say so. Discipline here is a second skin. You ask a man why they follow Shaka with such fire. He stares at you and says, "Because when we walk with him, we are already legend." But not all is glory. You hear whispers of darkness. Shaka's grief at his mother's death leading to mass executions, forced mourning, cattle slaughter. Power, once a flame, beginning to burn too hot. His enemies gather, foreign and domestic. In the end, it's not the British that bring him down. It's his own half-brothers. Assassination. A knife in the back, not a spear to the chest. Yet even in death, Shaka casts a shadow so large that entire empires trembled in it. You leave the Zulu heartland dizzy with awe. No gold, no pyramids. Just a man who forged a nation from iron will and turned tribal warfare into total war. And in your mind, the chant of his warriors never fades. Bayethe Shaka, hail the king. Chapter 42, the real Wakanda. The hidden science, metal, and magic of the Great Lakes kingdoms. You've crossed grasslands, deserts, and empire after empire. And just when you think you've seen all of ancient Africa's wonders, you arrive somewhere most outsiders never do, the Great Lakes region. Present-day Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, rolling hills, misty valleys, and kingdoms carved from rainfall and mystery. This is no savanna or desert. It is lush, green, pulsing with ancient rhythm. And it feels like you've stepped into Wakanda, but real. Your first stop is Buganda, a kingdom where kings are buried sitting on thrones and drum towers rule the skyline. The Kabaka, king, sits in a wooden palace so large, its thatched roof seems to kiss the clouds. But this isn't primitive. This is sophisticated. Iron smelting, done. Terrace farming, mastered. Royal road systems? Oh yes, and they are regulated with tolls and guarded outposts. Here, banana is more than food. It's currency, culture, cosmology. It feeds the people, oils the gears of society, and is even used in ritual marriages. But Buganda is only part of the puzzle. Across the lakes lies the kingdom of Rwanda, ruled by the Mwami, a sacred king said to be part God, part shepherd of the people. You're invited to witness the Umuganura ceremony, a harvest ritual, where the first fruits are offered to the spirits and the Mwami himself blesses the soil. The Ntore dancers perform for you, men leaping like antelopes, adorned in lion-maned wigs and rattling anklets. Their steps are coded with messages: war, love, ancestral pride. It's like Morse code, with rhythm. You feel it in your bones. Then comes something unexpected. You're taken to a blacksmith's hut, small, smoky, unassuming. But within it, two elders are crafting carbon steel. Yes, steel, not bronze, not iron. The Bunyoro and Toro peoples developed furnaces that reached temperatures high enough to produce steel centuries before Europe cracked the formula. You stare at a finished blade, gleaming, razor sharp, elegant. They called it Bantu metallurgy. You might call it evidence of a technological genius the world forgot to remember. But the real wonder of these kingdoms isn't just what they made, it's how they governed. Rwanda, for example, had a cattle-based census system where royal herders tracked not just wealth, but lineage. People knew their clan through a sacred totem system, ibitekerezo, oral histories that determined who you could marry, who you could feud with, and what sacred duties were passed to you at birth. Forget bureaucracy. This was ancestral algorithm. And yet, for all their complexity, these kingdoms were also scarred by cycles of power, coup attempts, mystical purges, and yes, colonial disruption. But in this moment, as you sit near the edge of Lake Victoria, watching a dugout canoe slice silently through misty water, all of that feels very far away. The air is heavy with moisture. Somewhere, a flute plays, and a storyteller begins to chant the tale of a king who vanished into the clouds. You wonder, was it myth or was it science?